First off, let me say good morning and welcome everyone to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. My name is Jerry Shockey. I oversee all the youth and educational programs here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we're extremely excited to have you guys part of this Heart of the Hall of Famer series, our next installment featuring Pro Football Hall of Famer Mr. Mel Blount. And before we get to the question part, we've got a few things that we'd like to do. But I know we have a number of new folks tuned into this. And, the one thing we like to convey with this program is that the Heart of a Hall of Famer series was started and created to really convey what it takes to get in the Hall of Fame beyond just the athletic ability. We know our Hall of Famers are, as we always say, awesome examples of athleticism, skill, talent, strength, speed, all those sorts of things. But there's a lot of people across the country that have those particular attributes. But it took a lot more than that to get enshrined in the Hall of Fame. It took these character qualities that you guys are studying and a whole lot more. The trustworthiness, the respect, the responsibility, the fairness, the caring, the citizenship, those 6 pillars, those 6 core pillars and more to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame. And I don't think this is too much of a secret, but if it is, I'll let you in on a little secret. Those aren't character qualities to being a great football player. Those are character qualities to being a Hall of Famer in everyday life, whether it's in your classroom, whether it's at your school, whether it's at home, whether it's at your church, whether it's at your other organizations that you volunteer your time with, whether it's with your sports teams, whatever it might be. And Mr. Blount is an example of this, of someone who's carried those pillars with them all their life. That not only have they achieved greatness by having their bronze bust enshrined here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but also have gone on to, and I'll argue that probably his off-the-field career is even, I would say, greater or more impactful than his on-the-field career, and we'll get to those things in just a moment. But as always, it takes a team of folks to make this possible, and first and foremost, our education partners, Extreme Networks, for being a part of this, powering this program. Obviously, St. Vincent St. Mary's High School for agreeing to host Mr. Blount. His son is a student there, one of the star basketball players, I believe. I don't know. Is he in the audience today? Is he watching this?
No, hopefully he'll be here shortly. They had some things come up where they had to go do interviews. So
okay, great.
Hopefully he'll be here before it's over with.
Great. I'm sure this is a message that he's heard before in his life. So, so I think it'll just be a refresher course for him. But for those students that don't know, Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's, obviously one of the things, they're a football powerhouse, or the basketball powerhouse. They just knocked off my alma mater about 2 weeks ago and are headed to possibly another, state finals or something like that. But it's also, some of you might know that that's the home of where LeBron James' high school that he played with as well. So thank you, St. Vincent St. Mary. Thank you, Annie Jolwin, the AD there. Jim Peccio, I know you guys have been working behind the scenes to make this possible. It doesn't happen without you guys. I know she isn't there today, but I always have to thank Mel's wife, Tianda. Whenever we coordinate these things, Tianda's the one that puts the pen to the paper and makes it happen. So thank you, Tianda, even though she's not there today. Mel, please pass along a thank you to her, as always, for these things. We have to thank the teachers. You guys made the arrangements, got your students out of class, you prepped them, did some of the preparatory materials, did research on Mr. Blount's background, research on these character qualities, and have come up with some great questions. So looking forward to hearing those. Thank you to you. And last but definitely not least, we have to thank the students, because you're the stars of the show here today. You're going to be driving the program. Those students that have flanked Mr. Blount there at St. Vincent St. Mary's, and also the students that are tuning in from all across the country. And what I'd like to do, so hopefully your St. V students have woken up there, Mr. Blount, but what I'd like to do is I want to give every school an opportunity to give a shout out. That way, A, I can introduce you so everybody knows where everybody's coming from. But B, then you can give a little shout out, show a little school spirit. I know, my apologies to some of you. I know your video conferencing stuff is in libraries, so I'm going to ask your students to shout out in your library. So my apologies for that. But we're going to start right there with Mr. Blount at Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's. I know he has about 15, 20 students with him. Students, go ahead and give a shout out there. All right. They represent a little better this time. Good. Thank you, St. V's. I don't think they're connected yet. I don't see them. DeAnzia High School in Richmond, California. I don't see them on here, so I think we'll check on them in between as Mr. Blount is giving his opening remarks. Let's go to Lakewood, Ohio, Garfield Middle School.
You're shouting out?
Yeah, shout out.
Thank you very much. Not bad. The folks in Kingwood, Texas are always amped up. So let's go to Shadow Forest. I think I've connected with every school district or building in Humble ISD, and every one of you have been rowdy as can be. So in a good way, in a good way. So thank you for your enthusiasm there, Shadow Forest. You haven't disappointed. Let's go to Pensacola, New Jersey, Carson Elementary School. Go ahead and give a shout out. Thank you. Did not disappoint there as well. And then I don't see Altitude Academy and Cleveland Metropolitan connected yet. So hopefully, I got some emails that they're having some technical issues. So hopefully they get things worked out. But if not, we're going to go ahead and get started with the program, which means I'm going to start with the introduction of Pro Football Hall of Famer, Mr. Mel Blount. First of all, Mr. Blount was a prototype quarterback of his era and a major reason why the Steelers were the dominant team in the National Football League in the 1970s. A third-round draft choice of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1970, he had the ideal size, speed, and quickness, things we've already talked about right now, but obviously he had a lot more than that. Plus a toughness and mental ability to adjust his coverage tactics to rule changes that favored receivers. He was a Pro Scouts All-America as both a safety and a cornerback at Southern University. Mr. Blount became a starter in the Steelers secondary beginning in 1972. That season, he didn't allow a single touchdown, his very first year starting. A fixture at right cornerback, Mr. Blount was equally effective playing either zone or man-to-man defense. Known for his rugged but clean style of play, his specialty was the bump and run pass defense. Because of his size and speed, he literally overpowered pass receivers. And I'm telling you guys, just search Mel Blount and go to YouTube and see him just slam wide receivers left and right. I mean, that's pretty much the bottom line. I mean, he just overpowered them. He was bigger, stronger, faster, and because of that, midway through his career, however, the rules were changed, making such harassment of a receiver illegal. So what you guys know is a 5-yard bump and run rule. That's unofficially known as the Mel Blount rule because of wide receivers couldn't get off the line because he just manhandled them. So that rule is, while it's not known as that, but it's unofficially known as that, it's because of the guy that you guys are talking here today. Mr. Blount is a native of Vidalia, Georgia. He wound up his career with 57 interceptions, which he returned for 736 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mr. Blount was named the NFL's most valuable defensive player in 1975 by the Associated Press, earned All-Pro acclaim in 1975, 1976, 1977, and 1981. He was also a 4-time All-AFC selection and played in 5 Pro Bowls. His fumble recovery in the 1979 AFC Championship game led to the Steelers' winning touchdown in a 27-13 victory over the Houston Oilers. A season earlier, in Super Bowl 13, Mr. Blount's interception ignited a Pittsburgh drive that resulted in a go-ahead touchdown in a 35-31 victory over the Dallas Cowboys. And get this, he started an amazing, and obviously they won all 4 of those, started an amazing 4 Super Bowls. And obviously he received the biggest honor an individual player can receive, and that's being enshrined here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But that's just page 1 of his intro. Page 2 is where I really get excited at, because this is really where you see Mr. Blount's passion in many cases. Obviously, he was passionate about football as well, but I think as we talk about, especially with youth, he has a passion that lies from that area. Mr. Blount continued to be involved with football after his retirement as a player. From 1983 to 1990, Mr. Blount was the director of player relations for the NFL. In 1990, he assumed a position as a consultant and a member of the National Football League Commissioners' Player Advisory Board. During this same time period, Mr. Blount was appointed president of Mountaineer Magic Entertainment. The association was related to horse racing and is located in West Virginia. Shortly before retiring from Pittsburgh Steelers in 1983, Mr. Blount thought frequently of what his life's work was to be. So think about that. Some people think, maybe football was his life's work. While he was playing football, he was contemplating what his life's work was going to be. And he had seen too many boys lost to a system that was failing them. So he decided to found the Mel Blount Youth Home in Vidalia, Georgia, to assist young boys in their pursuit to become productive members of society. Longing to do more, in 1989, Mr. Blount decided to establish another youth home near his adopted hometown in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he succeeded in building a youth home in the rural location of Claysville, Pennsylvania. His vision is to establish more youth homes throughout the United States. His compassion, service, and perseverance have already given many young men the opportunity and the desire to pursue their potential. And I've been involved with some of the functions, the fundraising events, and I've seen young men that have given their testimony of what the Mel Blount Youth Home has done and where they were headed in life. And once Mr. Blount and Tianda and the other folks there showed them the love and the encouragement and the work that it takes as well. You hear these testimonies of these young men, and it's powerful. I mean, it really is. I've heard a couple of them through it. It's his fundraiser that he holds every year that's coming up. So just really some life-changing things that Mr. Blount is involved with that I would argue and I don't think anyone else would dispute that football is one thing. It's still a game. We're talking about real impact there. So when you think about citizenship, you think about carrying those pillars of character, I think those are things that personify Mr. Blount. So before I ask him to have his opening remarks, what I want to do is I would like to share with you a quick, very quick highlight film.
Anyone seeking the model for a Hall of Fame cornerback need look no further than Mel Blount. Not just a great cornerback, he was a cornerstone of a defense that ranks among the all-time best.
I'll never forget my defensive coordinator. He said, Mel, you should play like that all the time. You could be as great as you want to be. And it stuck with me. Hey, I can be as great as I want to be.
Mel Blount was as great as he wanted to be and greater than most could hope to be.
And again, as I said, that doesn't do justice for his highlight career, but go to YouTube, check it out. But ladies and gentlemen, if you'd unmute your microphones for a second and join me in giving a warm round of applause to Pro Football Hall of Famer, Mr. Mel Blount.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
The microphone is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerry. I want to thank Jerry and the Pro Football Hall of Fame for this opportunity. Also, I want to thank the St. Vincent St. Mary's family for the opportunity to host this from the gym here, the LeBron James Arena. We're happy to be able to sit and talk and chat and share some things about life. I want to thank everybody from the St. V family, the administrators, teachers, students, for this great opportunity. It's always a pleasure when you have an opportunity to talk to young people. I certainly feel that young people are our future, and whatever investment we make in them is good and not enough, because if we want to have a great country, we have to raise up great young people. And I think that's what is so intriguing about St. Vincent, St. Mary's. It's a tremendous academic school. They're the state champions in football, state champions in cross country, state champions in wrestling. This year, our girls made it to the semifinals, and also our boys at semifinals in basketball, and we're looking for our boys to go and take the state. So we're in a tremendous venue here with such a great athlete, modern day athlete in LeBron James. This building is named after LeBron James, and we're just honored, we're proud, and we look forward to making a great contribution in the future. So let me just start out by saying, yeah, I was a football player, but in life, and Chuck Noll always said this to us, the more things you can do, the better your chances are of making a living and making a contribution in life. I played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I came from humble beginnings. My parents were farmers down in Georgia. I was the youngest of 11 kids, but they instilled in me some of the qualities that I think we all are looking for and we all desire in order to be successful in life. And I want to talk about a few of these qualities, and then we'll open it up for question and answer. I think one of the qualities that we all should have and must have in order to be successful is integrity. Now, and basically what I'm saying there is that we have to be honest. We have to have moral values, and we have to have respect for one another. So we have to have integrity. We have to have character. Character is, in my opinion, is not what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when people are not watching and when you're alone. Your character has a lot to do with the distance you'll travel in life. So we must have character. The other thing we must have is commitment. I see a lot of athletes, and I saw a lot of athletes throughout the 14 years of my career in the National Football League. They had all the ability in the world, but they didn't have the commitment. They wasn't willing to make the kind of sacrifice that it takes in order to be successful. And I think you see that in life, and you see it in the classroom. The students who are willing to study, willing to dig into the books, seek knowledge, prepare themselves, those are usually the students who are going to make the good grades. And it's no different in life. And these are the things that you learn. The other thing I think we all have to have is whatever it is that we pursue in life, we have to have the faith knowing that we can accomplish whatever it is that we're seeking. Now, the scripture says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, but the evidence of things not seen. And basically, if you have faith, you have to have confidence in your ability, and you have to have confidence in the people around you that's going to help you pursue the dreams and goals that you have. So to get to the Hall of Fame, I can tell you it was a tremendous struggle. Trying to stay healthy, trying to keep your grades up in college, in the pro football ranks, trying to be the very best that you could be, competing on such a high level. But all those qualities that we're going to talk about today is the reason that we were able to succeed and that I was able to succeed. Now, obviously, you have to have luck. Well, in my opinion, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. If you prepare yourself and the opportunity presents itself, then you're ready to take advantage of it. So I'm excited about this opportunity to talk to kids from all over the country, talk to the kids here at St. Vincent's, and just share with you what that journey was like from a little small school in Vidalia, Georgia. There was 28 kids in my senior class when we graduated, moving on to Baton Rouge, Louisiana at Southern University, and being drafted by the Steelers as a third-round draft choice, which I can tell you I was disappointed because at the time the Steelers had won one game and lost 13. They were the doormat of the National Football League. But we came in there with all these qualities that I'm talking about: integrity, commitment, faith, character, dedication, all the things that really completes an individual. And we took a situation and we turned it around because we had people with character. We had people who was willing to pay the price. And we had people that wanted something out of life. You have to have a thirst in life to really succeed. Anybody can just sell for anything. But what separates the people who succeed versus the people who don't are those people who are willing to take all these qualities and not just have them, but to exercise them, to start implementing them in your life. And so that's what I've been able to do. I also realized that when I had gotten to the pinnacle of the game that I chose, that I owed something back to society. And I think that's another quality, is that you can't be a selfish person. You have to be willing to give back. And so that's how this youth home came into existence, because I wanted to give something back to the community in which I came from. So with that being said, I want to say once again, it's a great opportunity. I'm looking forward to the dialogue, And Jerry, I'm ready if you are to open it up for questioning.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blunt. And there's a lot of things that first of all, I don't know if you guys can't really see it. I'll hold it up closer, but I take notes through these programs too. Learning doesn't stop in the classroom environment. So these are something that I have the opportunity to be involved with, that I continually take notes and get to do. And I think we're spinning around there at St. V's. I think we're spinning around to the students there so we can see them. Students at St. V's, you want to wave hi real quick? All right, there you go. Glad we could see you. But what we're going to do is we're going to go in the question order of Akron, St. Vincent, St. Mary's, and I don't see these other schools connected in yet. So we're going to go Garfield, Shadow Forest, Carson, and then Piedmont. We'll go in the order of those. We'll have each school ask one question, and just keep this in mind real quick. First of all, Humble, I think you keep hitting your mic. If we can just keep it set where it's at, we keep hearing the beep. I'm sorry. I keep hearing the beep throughout. I think you're trying to toggle the screen layout, and I know it wasn't quite in function the right way yesterday. So my apologies for that. But if we could just limit the key pounding, that would be great. But the real emphasis I'd like to say is that you're talking to one of the greatest football players that have ever played. When you look at the great cornerbacks today, if we talk about, you guys like Richard Sherman and Darrell Revis and these players that are out there, these guys aspire to be in Mr. Blunt's shoes, and that's being enshrined into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I would imagine that if they knew what Mr. Blount has done beyond just the football field, I would imagine that they would aspire even more to be in his shoes because of the things that he's able to do and that God's blessed him with the opportunity to do. So, again, keep that in mind. Ask those questions, and we'll go in the order of Akron, St. Vincent, Garfield, Shadow, Carson, and Piedmont. So, Akron, St. Vincent, if you want to go ahead with the first question, go ahead.
What character qualities do you believe it takes to be a Hall of Fame player?
Well, that's a good question. The question was, what character or quality do I think it takes to be a Hall of Fame player? Well, it's obvious, and I think we all know this, that everybody's not going to be a professional athlete. So let's just talk about the broader picture. Let's talk about being a Hall of Famer in life. And I think one of the qualities, as I mentioned earlier, it has to start with character. You have to be a person of good moral qualities and integrity, honesty, all the things that we try to raise our kids up to be. You want your kids to know that there's someone that's a higher being than us, and that's Christ. We want kids to know that the person that you meet is just as important as you are. And you want to give them that respect. And you want to be able to shape your life in such a way that you're willing to make sacrifices, not just for yourself, but make sacrifices for others. Now, that's what I think about life, being a Hall of Famer in life. Now, if you choose a sport or if you choose a profession, then you have to look and see what that profession requires to be great at it. If it's a doctor, or if it's a lawyer, if it's a politician, or even if it's an athlete, there are certain requirements that you have to have, and there are certain things you have to be willing to do if you want to be a great athlete. First of all, you got to have discipline. You can't run the streets, smoke pot, drink alcohol, stay up all night if you want to be a great athlete, because you're dependent on your body to help you achieve the things you want to achieve as an athlete. And it's the same as a doctor. If you want to be a doctor, you have to dig into the books. You have to know what that medical field requires of you to be successful. So all the things and that's the great thing, in my opinion, about sports. When you look at sports, it really, it tells you what life is all about. If you get knocked down, you got to get up. Everything's not going to go right every time you step out on the basketball court or the football field. I've had a lot of times where I got blocked, I got knocked down, got out of the play, but you got to get back up and get in the game. And it's the same way in life. You know, you're going to wake up some mornings, you're going to have all kind of distractions, all kind of issues, but you have to be focused, and you have to have that thirst and that desire to succeed. So hopefully that answers the question. I'll start to give you some idea of what it takes.
Thank you, Mr. Blount. And Jim, if we can have you spin that webcam back around, we love looking at the students, but I think also that everybody would like to see Mr. Blount as he's giving his remarks too. But we're going to go ahead and go from Akron St. Vincent to, well, we're going to stay in Ohio. We're going to go north to Garfield, Lakewood.
Just speak. How many years have you played in the NFL?
How many years did I play in the NFL? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, I played 14 years in the National Football League, and all of my years were played with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as I mentioned earlier, when I came to the Steelers had won one game and lost 13. They were playing 14 games at that time. And through the draft and through bringing in good people, good athletes, we were able to build something pretty special there in Pittsburgh. And I think they have continued that since the 70s.
Thank you very much, Garfield. Let's go from from Garfield to Texas, Kingwood, Texas, Shadow Forest Elementary. Go ahead with your question.
Was there a person that was important to you growing up that had the 6 pillars of character?
Yes. The people that was important in my development was my parents. A lot of you kids are young and you probably don't even remember, but I grew up doing segregation, and my parents were strong Christian people. They were good role models. They really exemplified to me and my siblings what parents are all about. They were good disciplinarians because we were just like any other kids. Every opportunity we had to do something, we would do it, whether it was and knowing that sometime it wasn't right. But the thing that I'm most proud of, that they instilled in each and every one of us the importance of having faith and the importance of having Christ in your life and living the kind of life that not only would be respectable and acceptable in the eyes of God, but in the eyes of people. And so I've always tried to live that. That's something that stayed with me from my upbringing, and I tried to pass that along to my kids. So those were the people that was good role models in my life.
And Mr. Blount, can you talk about, real quick, if I can interject here, those role models, we all have those role models in life. Sometimes they're our teachers, sometimes they're our pastors, sometimes they're our youth group leaders, maybe they are our parents, maybe they're our older brothers and sisters, whatever it might be. We all have them, could be the coaches. We all have those positive influences. We always think of peer pressure as a bad thing. There's also positive peer pressure as well. But if we don't take advantage of those opportunities, can you talk a little bit about that, of you knowing that you need to take advantage of those opportunities for the betterment of yourself?
Well, that's a great question. When I left home in 1966, I was going to school at Southern University in Baton Rouge. As I mentioned, schools were segregated then. There was no opportunities at the University of Georgia or Georgia Tech or any of those schools. But the one thing that when I left home knowing that I didn't want to disappoint my parents, and I didn't want to disappoint my sisters and brothers. In other words, I left home with the focus, I left home with the mission, and I wanted to make sure that I would do something that would make my family proud, but also do something that I would be able to reach back and help whatever situation my family was dealing with. We were farmers back in those days, and I knew our farm was in debt. My parents, back in those days, you could go to the bank and you could borrow money against your land and grow your crops and sell your crops and pay off your note. Well, over the years with my parents and bad crop years, they got behind in the notes, and so the farm was in debt. And one of the things I told my father, and it was one of the last conversations I had with him, was that I wanted to be a pro football player and I wanted to help pay the farm out of debt. And I was able to do that. So when you talk about role models, if you have a role model, if that's truly a role model, you have a tremendous amount of respect for that person. And the last thing you want to do is disappoint that person. So that was one of the driving forces behind all the things that I was able to accomplish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blount. And real quick, Jim, I think we spun a little bit too much. Either Mel, if I can have you shift to the right, your right a little bit, or Jim, just tilt the camera to the left. There we go. All right, perfect. All right, thank you very much. Let's go from Shadow Forest to Carson in New Jersey.
Hi. Okay, it's your turn. What was your biggest struggle when you were in elementary school?
What was my biggest struggle when I was in elementary school? Well, I think probably like a lot of kids, just focus, being young. And, you know, when you're in elementary school, everything is about having a good time and playing. But as you get older and as you mature, you start to understand how important things are. So I think when I was in elementary school, and I know that's been a lot of years ago, but I would say that was my biggest struggle.
Thank you very much, Carson. Let's go to Piedmont Elementary in Alabama.
Were you ever bullied, and how did you handle it?
Was I ever bored, and how did I handle it?
Bullied.
Were you ever bullied, and how did you handle it?
Well, you know, when I was growing up, there was always challenges. You know, kids were always at each other. I remember when I was in, I tell my sons this story all the time. My brother, which is 2 years older than me, well, he had his good friend, and back then they used to have recess where you would break and go out on the playground and play. And so we had boxing gloves back then. And so my brother, he had one of his buddies, he wanted his buddy to take care of me. And so we put the gloves on, and all the kids got around in a circle, and we were in the circle and we were boxing, and my brother was cheering for his friend, and I knocked his friend out. So that's back in those days, that was the kind of bullying. If you had an issue with a kid, you know, you would wrestle a kid, or you would, you know, get the gloves and you resolve your issues. Today's bullying, you know, I think we're sensitive to that issue, and I would suggest to any kid, if you're having those issues, that you let some adult know so that it could be taken care of, and it could be brought to an end. But I think throughout the history of man that there's always been challenges, and sometimes they was dealt with differently back in those days than they are now.
Thank you very much, Piedmont. Great question. Now let's go back to our friends there at St. V's. If you want to go ahead with your next question. And now we're spinning around. Here we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
How important do you feel accountability is on and off the court?
Okay, the question was, how important do I feel accountability is on and off the court? I think that's the most important thing, and I think it all goes back to respect. It goes back to those things we talked about: having character, having integrity, being committed to whatever it is you're involved in. Accountability is very important, because if you don't have accountability, then that means you really don't love and respect the people that you're working with.
Thank you very much. Another great question there, St. V's. Let's go back to Garfield Middle School in Lakewood, Ohio.
Yeah. What are some examples of times that you've had to persevere through adversity?
Oh, that's a great question. There's been a lot of adversity, not just on the football field, but even off the football field. I'll just give you a couple of examples. You know, you talk about mental toughness, and I think that's one of the things you have to have, not only on the football field or basketball court, but you got to have that in life, because you don't ever know what's going to be thrown at you, and you have to be mentally tough to deal with it. Some of the things, for an example, in 1974, we was playing the championship game in Oakland, California, and they was running a route that I really hadn't seen before, and I gave up 3 touchdowns. That was the championship game, but we won the game and we went on to win the Super Bowl. Well, that's an example of being mentally tough. If you playing in front of 50,000 people and no telling how many millions watching you on television, and something happens where you has made a bad play or got blocked or given up a touchdown, you have to have the mental toughness to forget about that. You have to have short memory, thick skin, and you have to be willing to move on to the next play. So that's one example of adversity. I've seen a lot of adversity building these boys' homes, challenges in the community, political challenges. But I think one of the qualities that people must have, whether they're in sports, business, or everyday life, and that's the desire to compete. When you know that you're competing for something that's worthwhile and something that you really want to get accomplished.
Another great question. Thank you, Garfield. And let's go to Kingwood, Texas. Is Shadow for us?
What did football teach you, and what does it mean to you?
Well, obviously, football has meant and still does mean a tremendous amount in my life. It has been a vehicle that I was able to take and use to better myself. I was able to take it and use it to get a great education, to raise a family. So it has meant a tremendous amount. It's been a great vehicle for me in my life. And so that's what it has meant to me. I'm sorry, I forgot. What was the other question?
What did football teach you?
What did football teach me? That's a great question. I have learned so much about life from football. One of the things that I've learned is that there's always challenges, there's always obstacles in the way of the things that you want to try to achieve. It's a great teacher in the sense that it teaches you how to work with people. We talk about being a team, whether it's in business or whether it's in education, life itself. You learn how to work with people. You learn the importance of having accountability. Someone asked that question before. You have to be accountable. You have to be trustworthy. You have to be dependable. It has taught me all those things. The one thing, and I think it's so important, and it irks me when I have staff meetings, it teaches you about the importance of being on time. You know, you can be a great defensive back, but if you are half of a second off on your time and your timing, you're not going to be able to knock that ball down, and you're not going to be able to make that interception. So being on time is important. And so football has taught me all those things, all the things that I think you need to go out in life and excel. It has taught me how to be humble. It's so easy to make a interception, run it in for a touchdown, and then act like you know, a king of the world. But it has taught me all those things about being humble, respecting one another, being on time, depending on people, that having a great team around you, being a great teammate. So that's just some of the things that the game has taught me, and I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you very much, Shadow Forest. Let's go to New Jersey. Carson?
What was your reaction when you got inducted into the Hall of Fame?
Well, there again, from what the game has taught me, I was humbled. I realized that I didn't get there by myself. I was very grateful for the Steel organization giving me an opportunity to play the game. I was grateful for all the great teammates that we had on that team. And I was also grateful for my high school coach, who really instilled something in me that I wanted to see happen later on. We had a high school coach, his name was Jimmy Thacker. And Jimmy Thacker had sent a kid to Allen University down in Columbia, South Carolina, to college. He was a running back. His name was Charles Bryant. And here I was, this 10th grade kid. Jimmy Thacker would have the whole football team sitting on the ground, and he would pull out an article, and he would read about Charles Bryant had scored a winning touchdown and had ran for so many yards, and they had won the game. And I was sitting on the ground looking at him, and I said, one day he's going to be reading to kids about Mel Blount. And so that was something that motivated me. It pushed me to try to be the best I could be, so that one day he would be reading an article about something that Mel Blount has done. And it was just a tremendous impression that made on me. And, you know, thanks be to God that I was able to live out that dream and even exceed my own expectations. So you never know, and that's why I think coaches are so important. You never know what you're going to say or what you're going to do that's going to influence a child to really excel or be the best they can be.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Piedmont, Alabama.
What NFL player did you admire when you were growing up, and why?
You know, when I was growing up, as I mentioned, it was years and years ago, and the country was totally different. We didn't have a television, but our neighbor lived probably a mile or so away, that sometimes my parents would let us go over and watch games on Sunday. And back in those days, the Baltimore Colts, they were the powerhouse in the National Football League. And there was a guy who went to Penn State, and his name was Lenny Moore. And if you ever want to read about a great person and a great running back, if you Google sometime when you have the time, Lenny Moore was a running back, and he was a great player, and he would score touchdowns. And I said, one day, I'd sure like to meet that guy, man. He's a great player. And because of my induction into the Hall of Fame, I had several opportunities to be in the presence of Lenny Moore. And I would tell him all the time, I said, man, you were my hero. You're the reason I wanted to play football. So he was the guy. They had Johnny Unitas and Raymond Berry. All those guys were just great players. And even Jerry Richardson, now who owns the Carolina Panthers, were on that team at that time. So those were the guys who really influenced me, and guys who I wanted to emulate.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Blount, you deal a lot with young people, obviously through your youth homes. If you were to say, maybe if there's one, I don't want to say pitfall, but one thing that these young people need to look out for that you find that has had the greatest negative impact on young people today, just because you deal with those that have been impacted that way. What would you say is the one thing, or maybe a collection of things that's impacting our young people today?
Well, there are so many things, and I talk with young people all the time, all over the country. Um, there are so many things, but I think it all starts, in my opinion, I think it all starts at home. It starts with the parents raising and instilling in those kids those moral values that is going to sustain them. Don't care what come or what go. If you have that foundation, and that's faith, and that's respect for one another, and respect for human life. I think it starts at home. As you have to instill that from the beginning with your kids. That's what we try to do with our kids. And then another thing, you have to constantly not only monitor, but you have to constantly counsel your kids, because there's so much out there. Obviously, we all know how drugs have destroyed kids, destroyed careers, and destroyed families. So you have to make sure that your kids are clean and wholesome. You have to make sure you instill in these kids the importance of going to church. I don't care what your faith is. You got to go, because you got to be refueled. You got to be re-energized. And it's just like driving a vehicle. You drive that vehicle, you have to stop somewhere and put gas in it. You go through the week, you're going to have all kind of issues you got to deal with. You got to go somewhere and get regenerated with your spirit. And so that's important. As a parent, you have to know what your kids are doing. You got to know what they're involved in. So, and I think now it's probably tougher than ever, because you got social media. And I know all the kids on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want to call it. And I always tell my kids, and whether they listen or not, we tell them all the time, the less people know about you, the better off you are. You don't have to every time something happens, you don't have to go put it up on Twitter. Twitter has been good, but it's also can be detrimental. So all these things that kids are dealing with today, it's even more incumbent on a parent to make sure that they are involved, that they know what their kids are doing, and that they constantly counsel and teach and monitor, whatever terminology you want to use, but you have to be involved with your kid's life. And I think if you do that, you're going to have a chance. And then I can't stress enough the importance of parents instilling in those kids moral values, knowing the importance of having Christ in their life. And all the things that you can grab a hold of in this life, it doesn't mean a hill of beans if you don't have, if you're not right with God, if you don't have salvation, if your soul is not anchored in the Lord. And that's something that we don't want to talk about, but that is part of the problem with our country. We've gotten so far away from the fundamentals. Every time we got into a big championship game, Chuck Noll always talked about the fundamentals of the game. You got to play basic fundamental football. And it's the same in life. It's the same in basketball, baseball, whatever you're doing. If you're sticking with the fundamentals, then you're going to have a good chance to make it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blount. And I do see that our friends at De Anza High School in Richmond, California did get connected. Thank you very much, Stacy. We have about 10 minutes left, I see, so we should be able to go from one question from each school, and we'll include De Anza to be able to ask a question, but we'll go back first. Before we go to De Anza, we will go to the students there at St. Vincent St. Mary's. If you want to go ahead with your last question.
What are some situations or events that took place in your life that you would say had a significant impact on your character?
Okay. Did everybody hear the question?
Yes, we did.
Okay, great. Well, there are a lot of events that took place and really helped shape my character. You know, when I left home, when I finished high school in 1966, and I left the next day going to Southern University. And when I left home, back then they had what we used to call foot lockers. It was a suitcase that you put your clothes in, So I had a Foot Locker and I had a big brown bag, and I got on a bus, a Trailway bus, and I rode from Vidalia, Georgia, all the way to Baton Rouge. And that had to have been the longest trip of my life, because it took me a day and something to get out there with the bus stopping in different cities. But when I got out there, they had promised me a job because it was during the summer and football season was going to start that fall. So I was offered a job. I was a traffic director on campus. I had this little yellow, orange vest, and I was directing traffic, at these intersections. And I don't know if you ever been to Louisiana, it's hot and humid. And so I go to work at 8 o'clock and I direct traffic to 12. Then I have a break and then I would direct traffic again until 3 or 4 o'clock. I mean, that was my job every day. And the captain of the campus police, his name was Captain Pass. And one of the greatest comments that I've ever received, especially while in college, he talked about my work ethic. And that was because I had been raised on a farm. My parents instilled in us the importance of hard work, which goes back to integrity, because if you have to do something, you have to be able to put everything that you are doing, everything you have into it. So that was one of the things that really, and it taught me that, if you do the right thing and if you do everything to the very best of your ability, even if it's not good enough, it's something that's good for your soul, because everybody's not going to be number one. Everybody's not going to, be the president of the student body. But if you give your best, so that was a great lesson for me. And I learned from that, whatever they have you to do, or whatever they ask you to do, just do it the very best that you can do. So that was a great lesson. One of the other great lessons I learned, and I talk to my kids about this all the time, you don't have to go to the best organization or the winning organization. Because when I was drafted by the Steelers, I didn't want to go to the Steelers. I wanted to go where they were winning. But when you go somewhere where they're winning, most likely they don't need you because they're already winning. One of the lessons I learned about coming to the Steelers, which I mentioned was the doormat of the National Football League, was that, you have an opportunity to take something or take a situation that might not be the best situation, but you can turn it into something special and make it whatever it is you want it to be. So that was a lesson. That was a lesson I learned about, you don't always have to go to the big city, or you don't always have to go to the best organization. Wherever you go, if you're willing to put in the time and put in the work and make the commitment, you can be successful. So there's been so many lessons that I've learned through football that I use now in running my business and applying in my life and even in the life of my family.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blount. Thank you for the great question there again with the students of St. V's. Let's go to Deanza High School, California. Welcome to the program. Go ahead.
Hey. Okay, go ahead. Come up here and ask. Read your question.
How do you feel as an adult that you are continuing to shape your character?
Were you able to hear him?
How do I feel as an adult to shape my character?
Yes.
Well, I think character is something that it really starts at a very young age. And I don't think you ever arrive to where you really want to be as a person, which means that you're always working and tweaking your character. But I think you have to have those basic core values in order to do that. And I think one of the things that's so great about reading the Bible, because it's kind of like a roadmap to life. The Bible says we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So I'm not a perfect guy just because I'm in the Hall of Fame. I'm not a perfect guy because I'm known around the country. We all have faults, and we all are flawed somewhere in our lives. And so I'm constantly trying to critique my character and shape it and mold it, not only where it would be something that I'm proud of, but something where God himself is proud of. And so that's a challenge, not only for me, but I think it should be a challenge for all of us, that every day that we get on this earth, we should strive to be a better person, and we should strive to do better things. And so that's what drives me. That's where I'm at in my life, and that's what I try to do.
Yeah, great question there to fill in there, Dan. I'm glad you guys got connected. Let's go to, we've got time for, we've got about 5 minutes. Garfield Middle School.
Football is many times referred to as an ultimate team sport. How do you think teamwork teaches you about life?
Well, I think it teaches you one thing, that, sports and football, it is a great team sport, but we are all dependent on somebody. I don't care how much money we have. I don't care what our positions are in life. For an example, if the garbage man goes on strike, then the community starts to smell because they're not picking up the garbage. So the garbage man is just as important as the president of the bank. I'll give you another example. We complain. I do a lot of driving all over the country. And I say, oh man, these big trucks on the road, you can't get here, you can't. But if those trucks wasn't running, we wouldn't have groceries in the grocery stores, or you wouldn't have some part that you would need at the parts store. So we are all dependent on somebody, and that's why it's important to give respect to people. Don't care what they do, don't care what their position is. And so that's one of the things that I've learned just by being humble and being grateful and knowing that everybody is important. Don't care what you do, or don't care what your title is.
Thank you very much. I know that's a philosophy that stemmed from the top down within the Steelers organization, as the Rooney family lived that way, lived their lives that way as well. Let's go to Shadow Elementary.
Did you get nervous before games? If so, how did you calm your nerves?
That's a great question. Every person is different. Some people get nervous before games. Other people are calm. Before every game, I was pretty calm and relaxed because I had confidence in myself, and then I knew that I had prepared, and I kind of knew what the battle was going to be about. So I was always excited to go out and perform and try to help get a victory. And I kind of have that same approach in life. I mean, it's not easy to run any business. And when you start working with kids, especially kids with problems, and then when you have a staff, when you have all these regulations you have to meet, I've learned so much from football about just being in the moment, being focused on what it is you have to do, and not worry about everything else that's going on around you.
Thank you very much. Another great question there, Shadow. Let's go Carson and Piedmont, and we'll end the program with the final thoughts from Mr. Blount. Let's go ahead, Carson.
We are studying Jackie Robinson. Did you have any negative experiences like he did? How did you handle it?
Well, I don't know of any Black person in this country that haven't had some kind of negative experience, whether it was directly or indirectly. And I think that we are still trying to recover from some of the things that we had to deal with in this country. But let me say this, that I think that adversity is healthy if you use it in the right way. I think it challenges all of us from deep down within to be the very best we can be and to meet the challenges that is presented to us. Obviously, the story of Jackie Robinson is well known, and he did go through a lot to break down some barriers, but there are other people out there who you probably would never hear of that was just as important in the struggle. But I think whether you're white or black, I think you can look back at history and you can learn a lot. It can motivate you to be a better person. And it can also motivate you to help change the world because we still have a long way to go. But those are the challenges that we all face, and those are the challenges that you try to prepare young people for going forward, because it's no different than running a relay race. You can carry the baton for only so long, and then you have to be able to pass it to someone else who has fresh legs and who has stamina. And that's the way I look at my family, my sons, is, you know, I can do this for so long, but then I have to be able to pass the baton. And I think on a broader picture, we have to look and think like that in America. And that's why our young people are so important to us.
And I see we do have 12 o'clock, but I don't want to leave Piedmont hanging. So Piedmont, go ahead if you got a last question. We'll ask Mr. Blount for his closing remarks.
How old were you when you started playing football?
That's a great question, because I get that question from a lot of parents. How old should my child be before I let him play football? Well, my situation was different. I started playing football in the 10th grade. And I can't tell you why, but that's when I started. And I think it's different for every person. I think it depends on the maturity of a child. So that's when I started, and I don't have any recommendations what age a child should start because everybody's different, but that's when I started.
And Mr. Blount, as I'm reading through some of my notes here and just looking back, as you know, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I think getting back to fundamentals, you know, not only in sports, but we should do that in life. And I love the last one because it paints a vivid picture for me as a father with a 3 and a 5-year-old at home, or 2 and a 5-year-old at home, is passing the baton. Is there anything you'd like to either reiterate that you talked about, or anything you'd like to touch on that we haven't talked about to close out the program?
Well, I would like to close out just by saying, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to all the schools from around the country that joined in and was a part of this program. But I want to talk directly to the young people. We're living in a time where it's important that we get the most out of everybody that we can. There are a lot of issues out there to be resolved. There are a lot of things coming at us at a high rate of speed. If I can give you any advice, my advice would be to really slow down and take a look at your life and really ask yourself, what is it that I want to do? What would I like to be doing 20 years from now? And whatever that is, then start now. Start working towards that goal. It's hard to be successful when you're all over the place, when you're running from this thing to that thing. You have to have a clear vision on what it is you want to accomplish. If you want to be a great lawyer, a great doctor, a great politician, great actress, great football, basketball, a great athlete, then you have to start honing your skills in and focusing towards that particular profession. And I like to say this too, don't cheat yourself. Well, what do you mean by don't cheat yourself? Don't cheat yourself by thinking that you can take shortcuts. There are no shortcuts in life. You're gonna have to pay a price, because you're living in a time now where you're not just competing against kids in America. You're competing against kids throughout the world. And you have to prepare yourself to compete on a world stage, because that's where our society is going. So I want to encourage you, and I want you to know that it can be done, but there's a price you have to pay, and you have to be willing to pay that price. Thank you very much.
And students, if you can all mute your microphones and join me in giving a warm round of applause to Pro Football Hall of Famer, Mr. Mel Blount.
Thank you.